Welcome to the 129th season of the Canadian Club Toronto, Canada's podium. For over a century, this stage has united visionaries and leaders from politics, business, community, and the arts to share insights on the most pressing issues of our time. And with Canada in a pivotal moment, it's more important than ever that we come together.
We've been having important discussions and debates around this podium in this country for well over a century. I call this a historic podium of record.
Our club's always been a forum for visionaries, public figures, and decision makers to command attention to the issues of our time.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. So I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon once again, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your lunch, and a warm welcome to everyone who's joining us online. My name is Shazanne Chu, President of Canadian Club Toronto, and your host for today. In a time when misinformation spreads faster than facts and polarization threatens our sense of shared purpose, the workplace may be one of the last remaining spaces where people from diverse backgrounds come together regularly. A powerful platform for civic learning, meaningful dialogue, and democratic renewal. Today, we are proud to convene an important conversation about the role our organizations can play in strengthening democratic culture. This event is proudly sponsored by Deloitte. Thank you for supporting today's important conversation. We are also grateful to our season sponsor, Air Canada, the Canadian Bankers Association, and our official airline sponsor, Air Canada, and our nature partner, Canada's Forest Trust Corporation, who help us reduce our carbon footprint by planting a smart forest in our honor. Thank you all for your partnership. We welcome students from TMU's the Dais and York University's Public Policy and Administration program. Thank you for joining us today as well. Now, before we move into the panel, just a few notes. To find more information about our upcoming events, please visit us online at canadianclub.org. And while you're there, consider becoming a member if you haven't already done so. We also encourage you to post about today's event on your favorite social media channels. And of course, through today's discussion, I'm sure you'll all have questions on fostering democracy in the workplace. And if you do, please use the question cards that are on your table. Our team will come around to collect them and hand them to the moderator. For those who are joining us online, please hit the Submit a Question button on the right side of your screen, and our team will keep an eye out for them as well. At this time, I would like to invite Mariam Hamid, Manager for Partnerships at the Dais, our partner today, to formally introduce the panel.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Promoting Democracy at Work and Why It Matters. I'm Mariam Hamid. I'm the Manager of Partnerships at Dais, a public policy and leadership think tank at Toronto Metropolitan University. At the Dais, we are working at the intersection of technology, education, and democracy to build shared prosperity and citizenship for Canada. It is a privilege to look at today and see so many leaders and changemakers who are working about what is truly essential for Canada's future. We are here today because we recognize the profound truth. The health of Canada's democracy and economy is inseparable from the health of the way that people have built our democracy. In an era of accelerating disinformation, increasing polarization, and declining institutional trust, the conversation must evolve. We can no longer view democratic stability as merely a political concern. It is a foundational element of the economic resilience we all foster for. But here is the optimistic truth, and one which is reinforced by looking around the room today. Canadian leaders are rising to this challenge. We have recognized that our workplaces, where Canadians are spending the most of their waking hours, are the most powerful, trusted platforms that we have to combat this challenge. This event is inspired by the pioneering work of the Dais' Democracy at Work initiative. This nonpartisan learning program recognizes that the workplace is the new frontier for strengthening our civic skills by equipping working-age Canadians with the literacy they need to understand our electoral system, identify misinformation, and foster constructive dialogue. To know more about this initiative, please visit teamdemocracy.ca and know how you, as a Canadian leader, can take the pledge to champion democracy. The leaders we have assembled today are not just discussing this opportunity to galvanize our democracy, they themselves have become champions, actively embodying the shift. They're stepping forward, demonstrating the kind of leadership that will ensure Canada remains strong, stable, and competitive in the global stage. Joining us today are Danny Asif, a partner at Torys LLP, Anna Serrano, President and Vice Chancellor at OCAD University, Anthony Veal, CEO of Deloitte Canada, and moderating this panel is Amber Mack, President of Amber Mack Media. I'm beyond excited to hear more from all of them, and I hope this conversation will inspire you to step up and join the work that the Dais has been doing to make sure that we can stand up to this challenge. Please join me in offering a warm welcome to our esteemed panelists and moderator.
Marion, thank you so much. Thank you.
Sorry. All right, there we go.
Yeah, like this.
We have some questions already, so please do keep those questions coming.
Yes.
Use the little note cards on the table, and looking forward to getting to some of those. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we are going to talk about promoting democracy at work. And I wanted to start this conversation with a discussion about some of the threats that exist today. And then we'll talk about some of the opportunities. So we'll end on a positive note.
Let's do that.
So when we dive into the threats, I think it's fair to say when we speak about democracy, two pillars that are absolutely so important are trust and truth. And right now in our society, we are absolutely seeing an erosion of trust that is taking place. And there are also attacks on the truth, two big issues. So I wanted to ask each of you in terms of some of the threats that you see out there, what are you seeing day to day in your work in terms of these threats? I'll ask each of you, and then afterwards I'll probably go to specific people for each of the questions. But I wanted to get your take on some of the threats that exist. Let's start, AV, down there.
Excellent. Thank you. I thought you were going to make me last, which means I'd have nothing insightful to say. But apathy would probably be the biggest threat that I see. Folk who are electing to opt out of the social contract that comes with living in a democratic society. So that'll be my number one. It's as a new Canadian, that's something that's jumped off the page for me.
And it's probably fair to say that apathy has happened for some people because when you think about the ways that we get our information and you think about trust in institutions, it's pretty overwhelming in terms of some of the challenges that we face. Sure. Anna, what do you think in terms of some of the threats we face today?
Well, to riff off what you're just saying, Avi, I think part of it is a lack of understanding of the types of agency people have. I think for too long, we think of democracy as simply that time you vote, right? But indeed, there are so many other ways to have a sense of agency in the type of city you want to live in, and the type of province and country want to have. And I think it's incumbent upon us as businesses and as civil society to actually open up the understanding of the general public, in my case, our students and faculty and staff, on how they can be more involved in the way we design our futures.
Absolutely. So we have apathy, we have agency. If you have something that starts with an A, Danny,
Yeah, no,
you're going
I
to win
was
a
trying
prize.
to think, too. The rhyming is always good. But firstly, thank you, everybody, for making time to come out on a Friday and to devote yourselves to this conversation as well. Because really, in essence, this is what democracy is really about. It's about dialogue and ideas. And we're going to get to talk about that a little bit later, too. And the threats. So, I don't know, is this a threat? I find this the lack of optimism and the loss of hope. This is where I find really the mood has shifted, because as Canadians, we always had this optimism. Even if economically things were not working out so great, we were optimistic. We're going to have a great day. I wrote a book called Say Please, Thank You, and Stand in Line, because these are the words that were shared with my family, my father, when he came to Canada, about what it meant to be Canadian. So this is a little bit of the issue that we have too, is just a belief in our best tomorrow, but I think we can restore that. Watching these faces in this room, seeing who's assembled here on a Friday afternoon, is what always gives me hope that tomorrow is even going to be better than today.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think all of the things that you've spoken about so far are absolutely connected. And I think there is some good news in this conversation despite these threats. The reality is that Canada is still and continues to be a full democracy. When we look at what's happening south of the border, it is a flawed democracy. And so we can see how quickly things can slip. So while there is optimism, we are also Canadian. I think we have to be practical in our approach to some of these challenges that we face. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the role that Canadian businesses can play to be able to mitigate some of these threats that exist. And I think we could even possibly try to answer the question, is there a role to play at all? Danny, what do you think?
Well, I think they definitely can play a big role. So firstly, you don't want your business to be political, because we are a democracy and it's a big tent. Every company has people of a diversity of political beliefs and thoughts, which is exactly what we want. But we have, what do we have in our companies, in our places of work? We have connection, like in this room. You have connection with real people, with real Canadians. People who you can see, they may believe something different. They may think absolutely the polar opposite of me. But like a team in sports, a team at work, you can work together for a common goal that is good for you, that's good for your company, and that's good for your country.
Absolutely. A.B., we were having a pretty interesting conversation at lunch, and I think you bring
was private.
So it was private?
I'm kidding.
Sorry.
I'm kidding.
Once I walk out of my house, it's public, okay, A.B.? That's how it works in Canada. Let's just be clear. But, you know, you have a perspective of what's going on right now in Australia, being from Australia. I was talking to you a little bit about how Australia is banning social media for teens, also mandatory voting. Can you talk a little bit about that and there's perspective you bring to this question about how workplaces can get involved?
So I think workplaces, it's not an option to get involved. I think it's an obligation of workplaces. And I say this in the context of trust. There's more than enough independent evidence out there that employees place a lot of trust in their employer. So in a world where trust is not freely available, you know, we have a responsibility, I believe, as organisations, corporates and otherwise, to the society around us, the system around us. So who else, other than organisations, to step forward and say, you should vote? Like the reminders I send out in Deloitte to say, voting day tomorrow, get out and vote. It's not your choice, it's your obligation as a citizen. And having gone through the citizenship process, it's pretty clear to do that. Get out and vote. And the other thing that we do is to say, look, choose the persons that are going to advance these issues. Because these issues are opportunities as what the country's facing. Just coming back to Australia for a little second, and this was a big surprise for me. If you're not aware, in Australia, other than the sunshine, there's compulsory voting. Everyone has to vote. If you don't vote, you get fined, basically, and it's substantial enough, and believe you me, they'll follow up, and they will actually collect it as well. to do that. So that's one thing. But perhaps the most important, and this is a big difference and I think something Canada can learn from, is preferential voting. Your vote counts right to the last candidate. So no one can abdicate responsibility for the elected official. And that was an eye-opener for me over the last election or so, just the vitriol from society with regards to the elected official, to sort of say, because they had no ownership in that. So that's two features of the Australian system that I think we can learn from here in Canada.
Just a super quick follow-up for you. When you talk about that vitriol, something that we discussed also at lunch, and I'm sorry for revealing this conversation, but I had said to you, do you think that we could have something like mandatory voting in Canada in a society where increasingly we're seeing polarization that is driven from some of these big tech companies and social media companies? And I loved your answer to this.
So, you know, when you're in front of a lot of people, you've got to choose your words carefully now.
Take your time, take your time.
No, I don't think it's possible here. I want to be full of hope, but I don't think it's possible here because it's not in the best interests of a few that want to get to that position and to, to push that agenda. Why? Because from the edges, you can manipulate the outcomes that you want for personal benefit. One of the things, this is my hope message, and what I noticed in the last election, more people voted, that's goodness. You know, when push comes to shove, when it gets difficult, more people voted. The other thing that I found that I believe to be true in a democratic society, the politics moved to the centre. You think about Canada versus all the other countries around the world, and there was multiple elections, that didn't happen. So I was proud that to sort of say, not only did we increase our participation, but we come to the middle. And the middle, I believe, encompasses more the feelings of all Canadians rather than a few at either side. So I think I ad-libbed a little further on our conversation, but I think that was...
It was along those lines. Anna, you have such a unique perspective to bring to this, being in higher education and the responsibility that comes along with that. When we think about some of the division that we're seeing in Canada, if we keep with the threats, and we will get to optimism in a few minutes, but social media plays a significant role in terms of dividing people, spreading disinformation and misinformation. The Dais is doing great work in terms of really revealing the sentiment of Canadians right now, what's happening. When you look at social media and technology, something you know a lot about working in the digital space over the years, what do you think of the state of things right now when it comes to our discourse in these digital spaces?
Terrible, first of all. Okay, so let's face it, it's a real shit show. Am I allowed to say that?
Sure.
It's Friday, you can.
Yes.
Casual Friday includes that.
But having said that, what's really, really interesting is that I am seeing some glimmers of a form of digital self-consciousness, or a form of digital consciousness emerge in Gen Alpha and Gen Z. So these are the digital natives that have grown up as children. And so I think a lot of it is because the mainstream media and the public are more attuned to the harms being caused by social media. There's more conversation taking place with younger children. There are more rules and habits being developed around use of social media. And I think this discourse, this dialogue of what are we supposed to do, how are we going to mitigate against these harms, is resulting in a form of consciousness on the part of the young people about what they're seeing in their feeds. Are there still issues regarding the way algorithmic feeds are framing issues for young kids? Absolutely. But is there a growing sense of mistrust of those feeds? I believe that that's starting to happen. And in fact, what's going on now is as they graduate, we're going to see this not quite yet because the cohort hasn't come to us yet as university sector. But I think we're going to see that kind of quite sensitive critique of the medium emerge, especially among the artists and designers. We're already seeing that in this cohort, and the 20-year-olds, certainly in terms of climate change and climate justice issues, they're very concerned about that, and they're applying their concern about it in the way they make work. Certainly that's what I'm seeing at OCAD around circular economy production models. And I think hopefully we're going to see that in the way they attend to the digital issues.
Amber, may I add just a couple
Please
of things
do,
on
please do.
what companies can do just more on a practical level? My observation is, first, mindset. Give people on the team, give colleagues this mindset that the space you can participate as a citizen in other things. A lot of times we get focused on our work, which is absolutely number one priority. We have an obligation to our employer, but also as we're here today, it's part of a bigger game board. So just the mindset that there's the space open for you to participate as a citizen. Number two, the tools, just things. Like I did my cyber training, Tori has a cyber training. You know what, there's helpful tips in there. You go through there, that's a little tip on what a phishing email looks like, or things that look suspicious. Those tools are really helpful, or things, another thing we do at the firm is for people who sit on nonprofit boards. We're lawyers, so what do? We give them training on how to sit on a board so you can participate in nonprofit boards. So all the things within your organization that you can think can open up space for people to participate as citizens, and number two, the things in your expertise that you can give people a little bit of tools to navigate technology or to be able to help their participation in other endeavors.
I think it's a really good point, especially on the digital literacy piece. I think that's something we probably need in this country in workplaces right now, is more of that digital literacy, AI literacy as well. We know Canadians are a little skeptical of some of this new and emerging technology, but at the same time, I don't want to put all of the responsibility upon employees within workplaces, because the big tech companies in many cases have caused a lot of this division as well. So they bear some responsibility too. But Danny, maybe I can ask you a little bit of follow-up in terms of some of those practical things you mentioned, cybersecurity training. What about AI, as a concept in terms of some of the skills training to be able to understand AI in order to have these everyday conversations? But I think it also helps in terms of our democratic values when we can get closer to the truth and away from some of this deep fakery we're seeing on social media.
Actually, what a great question. So, going to use a cliche. Everything, a threat, an opportunity, whatever the cliches are. Technology always posed this. So firstly, a comforting thought. Every innovation in technology created uncertainty, it created fear, and it created hope. I did something a little while back I wanted to portray. It was on AI. So I played, at the start of the event, the radio broadcast of War of the Worlds. Radio, the most primitive kind of media today, it set people into panic. They say people went into the streets, some people took their own life. I don't know, they thought the aliens were actually invading. So that's disinformation using radio. What did radio made Elvis famous later, and Buddy Holly and all the great music. So we were able to figure that out. Same thing with AI. We need to have this conversation, firstly at work. It's not going to put me out of work, right? 100 years ago, 97% of the economy was agriculture. Not so much today. We found other things to do. So we have to think about how it can elevate us into kind of higher order, more value-added things, and then also be very conscious of the threats. Just to pay attention to where those threats are, identify them, and try to work collaboratively to nip them at the bud so that it doesn't look like it's back to what you're saying, agenda-driven. It could be agenda-driven in any case. Oh, why are you trying to shut that down? Does it push your agenda, or is it genuinely towards, there's no perfect solution, but on balance, more good than harm. We don't need this piece of it. Just like I like to go 200 kilometers an hour to get to my grandma's house for dinner, but not so good because it's putting everybody else's lives at risk. We have speed limits there. It's okay. We can figure that out and come to the best solution in the situation.
Anyone else want to take the AI question?
Well, I think the biggest issue with AI, so for those of you who don't know, OCAD University and the Dais at TMU and Open Democracy Project have been partners in producing this Canada's annual democracy summit called Democracy Exchange. It's coming up April 16th to 18th. It's going to be fabulous. 2 years ago, we brought Tim Wu to be our keynote, and he said that the single most important regulatory thing we could do regarding AI is to just make deep fakes illegal. Okay? You're not allowed to take anyone's likeness and represent it in any form. And so part of, I think, where we're going to need to go to in AI is when we don't know whether what we're seeing is the truth anymore, right? Then we need to have the attendant regulatory frameworks to be able to help us navigate how to assess what we're seeing, what's right in front of us, especially for issues like the news or when we're talking about electoral politics. So content provenance is really critical, and our broadcasters are doing a tremendous job. CBC, BBC, and the vestiges of NPR are looking at how do we create the technological and process and regulatory fixes to ensure that we know where content comes from and how that content gets changed over the course of its life cycle. So this is very tricky, like wonky, technocratic stuff we have to do, but we can't shy away from the very difficult work of ensuring that what people see, they can figure out what it is. So truth is in peril. And you could argue it has always been. You could talk about the Méliès brothers and the train leaving the station. But this is, I think, a different kind of problem that we're facing.
But I do thank you, Anna, because you've shown there's more work for lawyers. Talk about how we're going to go to the economy. We just found a new opportunity right there.
Exactly what we need, more lawyers.
Thank you.
More lawyers.
Thank you.
Exactly what we need. Literacy. I think what Danny gave a couple of good examples. We just got to make sure we make a conscious effort that not only our employees, but our employees' families, friends, and otherwise get up the literacy curve. Two, Canada does it as a trust deficit when it comes to AI as well, which could be a strength in what we're talking about here today, or will be a strength in the context of what we're talking about today, but a huge negative for our big challenge in the next decade, which is productivity. And that's been something that's, I'm sure, has been spoken on this stage many times before in the last 15 years. So that's the problem on the other side. When it comes to literacy, I mean, AI is just a prediction engine. It doesn't tell you when it doesn't know, just gives you the best guess that they can come up with. Just knowing that alone is important. And having all Canadians understand that is important. And then the last piece I would play is that organisations that are pillars in our societies, in our communities, like government agencies, corporates, other organisations, we should have some sort of code of conduct vis-a-vis the way we construct the algorithms. There should be some responsible AI frameworks that are in place there that can, for want of a better word, provide the guardrails to help with that trust deficit, because you're damned if you do embrace it, and you're damned if you don't. So how do you embrace it with the appropriate guardrails? That's the number one thing that corporates and other pillars in society need to be doing.
I want to just pick up on that a little bit. I also want to say we have a lot of questions, so I'm going to get to some of the questions in a minute. And I know it's not really my role on the panel to voice my opinion, but I love...
Please.
I'm going to,
Please,
because
contribute.
here I am.
But what do you think?
I want to tell you. Here we go. So, no, I just want to follow up on you say in terms of the guardrails. I actually think this is a bigger issue than sometimes we acknowledge here in Canada. Not only are we living in a country where people aren't able to see news on the social media platforms where they are going across Meta platforms. You can argue that, okay, Meta is just adhering to the law. The reality is last year Meta made $16 billion from scammy advertisements that were promoting banned materials and products. So, you know, the law only when it applies in their best interest. So I say that because I think it's driving people apart in a way that comes into the workplace, just to bring it back to this discussion. Because if you have people living in a world online where they are so often being fed misinformation and disinformation, massive tech companies profiting off of this in that process, we have an erosion of trust. We have an issue in terms of people not seeing the truth because now there's no news, there's only all this spammy stuff. And so the literacy piece to me, to your point, perhaps could be even bigger among businesses across this country, and also the guardrails would play a role as well. But I actually think, we're having a nice casual conversation. I think this is a bigger issue than we're actually admitting right now, and I think it's seeped into the actual core of the communities across this entire country in a way that's going to be so toxic that's going to make us slip down in terms of that democracy index to a place that we don't want to be. So, any comments on that?
Well, I know, it's great. No, I think those. So you're with this big transformational technology. It's like space exploration too. No one really knows where they're going, right? And it's kind of even with Facebook and Amazon. They've started books. They became the digital marketplace to the world. Like they didn't even know where they were going. So we're all trying to figure it out, which is why you need to be careful, because you need the trust to put the guardrail. Like the trust, like I said, we trust 100 kilometers is a fair balance. We have to have that conversation. Firstly, before you get to the rule, the context with which that you're having it is we trust we're going to try to figure out the right balance. The other thing, on the optimistic side, we evolve as humans. So I always joke, the first person who the bravest people are the people our forefathers and foremothers and foresisters and brothers who picked that first berry off of that bush, and then some people died. And they're like, don't eat the green berry, Jimmy died. Stop doing it. These people evolved. They learn that's bad for you. I use that as a joke to say with technology too. Anna, you referred to it. This new generation, they have a sense. They have a smell of what's right and what's wrong. They're going to figure it out too in that same kind of evolutionary way using our technology. So between the two things, hopefully we'll survive this.
Fingers crossed. A couple comments here, and then we'll move to the questions.
Just the foreign interference is a big issue there, but I was not smiling about that per se. But Danny's talked about 100 kilometres per hour being a rule. Anyone who's been on the 401 knows that we don't do that. And in Australia, don't go over 100. You'll get fined. But I just wanted to say that. But to your provocation, Amber, that foreign interference is you're opening up your communities now to folk that have no interest in your communities, and certainly not in the best interests of your community. And I think that's an issue that will drive the democracy index down very, very fast.
Yeah. Well, I do think that we have to do some deep thinking in our policy environment around how we approach some of these issues that you've raised. We had Cory Doctorow last night give a public talk at OCAD University. He's doing a workshop with us called Jailbreaking Canada, and also talking about his new book called Enshittification, Why the Stuff That Keeps Getting Shittier, something like that, and also what we can do about it. And so what's interesting about what he said is that, we have to unlock our political imagination to potentially design new policies that actually incentivize people to do the right thing. And so it's less about punitive policies that punish bad actors, but it's about figuring out how we can convince bad actors that it is in their economic interest to also serve the democratic health of a country. So all the young people here today who are in public policy or whatever, that is a call to action. Are we designing the right policies that actually incentivize economic actors to do the best for democracy? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. That table over there.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go to some questions from the audience. The first one is, how do you promote civic engagement and critical thinking without confusing it with a company's culture?
I get the easy one. I'm not sure I understand the question completely. Is it like, how do you promote engagement, but making sure it's not the company's agenda? Is that what we think it is? Because one of the...
I would say, if I were just guessing, I would say that probably how do you encourage those things without getting political? That would be another way to say it.
Yeah. Oh, we've actually designed something in Deloitte called the Future of Canada Centre, and Ed plays a role on that, who's sitting just down here in front of me. We try to have as impartial, objective a view as to what are the necessary opportunities that our country should capitalise on, what are some of the risks that we should be dealing with. We've dealt with things like digital equity and making sure that we don't leave any Canadians behind. We've dealt with things on how to build a better country economically that can grow at 3+% in the future, what changes would need to be made. So they're not actually political per se, they're just common sense things that we as Canadians should advance or at least consider. So I think that's one way to do that. And as I said before, we encourage people to vote, because I'd like to get to 100%, not 75%, and start high-fiving everybody. Get to 100%, but also to say choose wisely as to who you're voting for based on the things that are really going to move the needle for Canada going forward. So that's the way we try to do it.
Excellent. Anyone else?
I think it is about actually quite specific policies. I mean, as a university, we're bound, we have a different set of design constraints, if you will, as a governance body. But for corporations, I have seen instances where, one is incentivized to do volunteer work, or to be part of a community engagement strategy. And in the same way that you get, a wellness break, you get a volunteer break and things like that. So, and again, those are nonpartisan ways of engaging people to get involved in their community.
And just to add, I think I alluded to this, just light touch from the top in terms of political leanings, so that people feel like they have the space. And then those little policies, like we do not support a political party. You cannot host, under the firm banner, a political event. Like all those kind of things, they signal to people, I can participate, but my place ain't political.
Excellent. Okay, this is a great question that just came in. Dialogue and ideas were mentioned as critical elements of democracy. What about dissent? How do we ensure our efforts, especially in the workplace, are not just trying to placate dissent?
I love dissent. I have 4 kids, and my wife is the brains of the operation. I am subject to dissent all day long, and it's the greatest gift that I have. I've yet to be right, but it is critical. And people come into a room and I'm like, where are we coming from that you walk into a room of strangers and think everybody's going to agree with you? That is if you walk into a room like that, turn around. Something really weird is going on. Because if at your dinner table, your own flesh and blood will take you on, that gives you a signal as to what the real world is like, and to have a little humility when you're sitting in these conversations.
I'd throw in that I think you've actually got to head to dissent. To do your job, you've got to find someone who thinks differently to you. And I'll play it back just in the way in which you do business. You're always looking for new ideas. You're looking for better ideas and better solutions. You don't get that from talking to the people that think exactly the same as you. So whether you call it dissent, difference, or otherwise, whether you call it it's uncomfortable, head towards the uncomfortable, because that's where the gold is, so to speak.
And often the fun.
Lots of fun. But being able to be respectful, polite, inclusive, creating a safe, psychologically safe environment, I think that just goes with the territory. And that's the beauty of democracy, that we can dissent and move on.
I feel like that's one of the most important pieces in many ways, is being able to have conversations, even conversations just like this, where not necessarily everybody agrees, sitting around tables, being respectful, all those things that don't happen in social media. which I think makes the face-to-face experiences within the workplace actually more important because you can start to have those conversations there.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go.
Well, thank you, Avi.
No, I think, go ahead, yeah.
I was just going to say that we are more civil when we're sitting here with each other. It's really easy to be behind a screen to sort of, and we've also, made it acceptable that we can behave in certain ways from behind a screen. But when you're sitting across the table, I think the best of our humanity comes out, and we've got to come together more often to be able to do that.
You know what a policy change would be good for public sector organizations is allowing us to actually revive hospitality expenses. Because it's actually really important to bring food, to use food as a way to do this kind of work, okay? And it's a real pain to not have that tool, I have to say, as university president, because what I would really like to do is just have dinner with students all the time.
May I add something?
Please do.
Not because I love food. I hope that's not the point. The point is not the dinner part, okay? The point is you need a place to gather together and break bread, and be in a kind of level playing field with everyone, because we're all stuck in our bodies, right? We're all kind of embodied thinker people, and we need that space to be like that together.
Thank you, Anna. And as you can tell, I like the food, so I'll just show up for the food. But the thing about, this is about, because democracy is a big part of this conversation, and so many people here have traveled the world, and more than me, and you reflect times, what is the core of a democracy? What is its real foundation? Is it the voting? Is it the election cycle? What is it, how you finance vote? And, as going around the world, try to figure out what it is. And for me, it's captured in this phrase. It starts with, it is a place, it's about dissent, where the peasant can contest the king and the peasant can prevail. If you have that, it seems like everything else can follow from that. And that is the critical part of dissent as you travel the world and figure out what makes democracy special.
And I'm grateful we still have that in Canada, right? And,
exactly.
And I say that sincerely. This is a great question, and it is from TMU students, I believe, so it's a group question. How can leaders bring young Canadians into the conversation and meet them where they're at? Anna, you talked a little bit about this already.
Well, I think you gotta listen. Listening is a skill, and I think a lot of people don't do it very well. Because they tend to, there's confirmation bias, right? And we're all bound by that particular biological trait. But what we have to do is overcome that and just really do some deep listening and not just pick and choose the things we want to hear. And perhaps the other thing that leaders can do is not necessarily respond right away, which reinforces that deep listening practice, and allow themselves to not have an answer. So, I don't have an answer yet. Let me think about it. Let me, and that's it's a function of our media environment that kind of slow thinking is seen as somehow as being unresponsive. And so we need a way to allow people to say they don't know yet. So I'd love to know how media makers can give space for leaders to do that.
Well, I think it all starts with conversations, right? And talking to all different types of people. And I think more conversations, the better. It sounds pretty obvious, but I feel like that's a really important part of this puzzle. And to stop shutting people down who have a different opinion than you do. Like, I'm still on X, and it isn't always fun there, but I'm still there. And I enjoy, a bit of that dissent. And I'm okay with it because I continue to be respectful and engage in conversations. And I don't want to shut those doors. Maybe this is because I'm from a really small town in Prince Edward Island, but everybody talks politics all the time, 24/7, and everybody votes. And so I grew up in a place where that was okay, and that was just expected. And I think if we can get to that point, it would be really good. Yeah. And face-to-face and conversations becomes an important part of that.
I'd even add to the, you've got to put yourself out there and listen would be echoing the comments here, but also leveraging some of the technology to do that. We run an internal social media channel, so everyone from the recent grad to the experienced partner can ask a question, and the response is in front of 15,000+ people. So even though you can't physically have 15,000 deep conversations, because I agree with you, listening is a lost art, unfortunately, how do you augment that with use some of the technology for good, to be able to engage and having a dialogue almost as equals, so to speak. And I say that because it took about 6 months to earn the trust before that new grad sort of said, AV, why is that not working? Good question. I'll ask somebody else because I don't know. To your point, it's okay to even sort of admit we don't have it right either. So I'd just give a plug for technology to be able to leverage and listen.
Great advice. We have just about 5 minutes left, and I do have a lot of questions. And I've never done this on a panel before. Are you guys? Are you open to an idea here?
Yeah. Whatever you got.
Okay. So I'm going to take these 3 cards. Just pass them down. Don't look at them.
Cards.
And you will each read the question,
I got to do like this.
and then you'll answer it. And that way, I won't be picking. Come on, Danny. You had one job.
Here we go. Let's see that.
So pass a question, and then if you could take maybe less than a minute to respond to that question. We won't go through the panel for everyone, but if you want to read your question out loud, you have a shorter question, Danny. So let's
It's
start.
not so short, actually. That's kind of long. I got to read that here.
Oh, yes. Got a small writing.
Okay, give me
I
back
need better
the
glasses.
Give me back the questions.
I can start. This discussion is focused primarily on Canada's internal democratic resilience. However, in what ways can democracies such as Canada and the democratic-oriented companies within them confront and defeat the external threat of dictatorships, which are often sources, sponsors, and agitators of internal instability? So this is interesting because I'm going to and since you're trying a new format, I'm going to try a new format too, and pitch Deloitte on a service that I'd like to sell them.
I love this. I love it.
Which is that sometimes the best way to think about how to address really complicated things like, oh my God, what if authoritarians are going to come at the gate of Canada and take over? How do we deal with that? One of the best ways to address that is through certain methodological practices, of which OCAD-U has become very well known for, which is strategic foresight and innovation. And it's futures thinking. It's a set of design practices that allow you to unlock the political imagination to see different types of futures that could emerge given a set of drivers. So what companies can do is work with people like us and our futurists and foresighters to engage their employee groups in this kind of thinking. Because we don't spend enough time in our daily lives in companies to really think about scenarios for the future, because we're so trapped in our daily grind of getting our work done. But if we can somehow elevate our folks to think differently about what are the different scenarios in the future that could emerge if X, Y, Z happen, et cetera, then that will create a more sophisticated and I think informed employee base that can actually help design new products and services that could support the potential futures that could emerge. So we can have an offline talk later. No, that was very rude.
Pitches.
No, but it's not. I didn't really. I was being playful.
good.
I'm not really selling.
I'm also Aussie. I'm not offended. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
But I think it's about using different design methodologies to do this and being open to that.
Absolutely.
How can companies encourage employees to be open and honest about political topics without creating the discord that such processes are meant to avoid? Where do you start? If I understand this question correctly, I think it starts with creating a psychologically safe workplace where people can speak up. I think it's also then creating the forums where people want to talk about this as well. So That's where I would start, is first establish the trust that you need such that the dialogue can be open, honest, with the ground rules of being respectful, inclusive.
Great advice. I know we do have to wrap up. Danny, can you do this in just a few seconds?
I can do it in a few seconds, but my question was actually the same, how to bring people together. So I'll share two last thoughts. First, the business case for democracy, as we were talking about before, is you need to work in places, you go around the world where you can know people are not going to steal your money, so the peasant can contest the king, and there's transparency, there's rules about the way the game is played. You don't have that foundation, you do not have a strong economy. Last thing about getting people together, what I've noticed, and I try to remind myself first, is this expectation that we need to convert one another to love one another. I don't know where that came from, that you have to convert somebody to your belief system to love them. That's never been the case, and we should always resist that. We can love everybody, regardless of whether they believe exactly what we believe.
Well, that is a wonderful way to end, so thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, okay. I did not get the memo.
Let me give you your thank you while you're still on the podium. Thank you so much to our panelists, Anna, Anthony, and Danny. Your insights are on democracy and civic literacy were so inspiring and timely, so really appreciate it. And Amber, thank you for moderating our panel with your signature warmth and skill. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
To Mariam and the Dais team, thank you for your meaningful partnership in today's event. We've been really proud to work with you to bring this important conversation to the club. And thank you again to Deloitte for sponsoring today's discussion, and to our AV partners, VVC Live. Thank you for your always exceptional support. We have a small gift for attendees today. On your way out, please pick up a copy of the book that Danny mentioned, Say Please and Thank You and Stand in Line. One man's story of what makes Canada special and how to keep it that way, by our esteemed panelists, Danny and staff. Thank you. And please, also pick up a card that contains, this card outside that contains more information about the Dais's Canadian Democracy at Work. There's a QR code, more information there. Before we close, I invite you to mark your calendars for a few of our upcoming events. On December 8th, we host a timely panel on solving Canada's housing crisis, featuring Anna Bailao, Jamie McKenna, and Victoria Mantinelli. On December 12th, we welcome the Honourable Anita Anand, Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs. And after the holidays, on January 8th, join us for the 49th Annual Outlook, discussing the road ahead for 2026. Please visit canadianclub.org for more information on these upcoming events, on-demand content, and how to become a member. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all again soon.